So thank you for joining us today. Our artists are Olival and Leonore Stormes, and they're going to share with us their artist stories and show us some of their artwork. Kay is a photographer, and Leonore, among other things, is a painter. So I'm going to remove hers, and Kay, if you want to go ahead and get started, please do.
Okay, I will share my screen and all right. Okay, I hope everybody can see this photo.
It's a wonderful photo.
Some will be big and some will be not so big, but I just thought I would start at the beginning. So this is me, Mom, and Dad. Right after I was home from the hospital. Excuse me. And, you know, it's always nice to have them around. So that's where we started. And this next photo, this is at our home. Dad, Mom, and me again. And I am in Tiverton, Rhode Island, which gets snow, which is probably why I like to go and take photos of animals in the snow or during the winter, because, hey, that's where I grew up. And I know some of you are going, wait a minute, Rhode Island, it's by the water. There's water everywhere. How does it get snow? Well, it does. And nothing like what we get here in California in the higher elevations, but we still get snow. So that's the beginning. Then you can see I'm a bit older here. And one of the things that was really, I think what started me on my path was my dad. And my dad and I would watch Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom every Sunday night. And we'd talk about it. And then as I got older and eventually, because again, Rhode Island is by the ocean, you know, we would go fishing. I would fish with my dad. It was just myself and my brother, and I'm the oldest. So I was daddy's little girl, and I was always tagging along behind doing whatever. So this was part of my adventure growing up. From here, this is me in Alaska, again, quite a number of years ago, with a great horned owl right next to me. And I think with the Mutual of Omaha, it really got me wanting to go out into the wilds and see things as they are. Now, unfortunately, here, this particular photo, we're at an animal rescue. So that great horn, he's got a little tie around his foot, so he couldn't go anywhere. But I got to tell you, when I was inching my way over there to get this picture taken, he just kept looking at me, and I was like, man, those claws are huge. Hopefully he doesn't attack. So I lucked out, no attack, but this was, you know, a lot of fun to be in Alaska and to see what Alaska had to offer. Then, yeah, I do kind of crazy things. This was in Cancun, and I would probably never do this today, mainly because I don't think it's so good for the animals. But at the time, it was this place in Cancun that you could go and swim with the dolphins and get your picture taken as one was giving you a kiss. So, you know, who's going to turn down a kiss? Not me. So here I am with my me and my dolphin friend. All right, so now let's fast forward. Here I am in the Galapagos, and this, I have to say, was my first trip that was really all about being outdoors, and it was always a bucket list trip. And again, when I think about Mutual of Omaha, it's kind of like they had so many great animals, and they were all shown in their natural habitat, and that's what I really wanted to see. So off to the Galapagos I went, and I will say that the Galapagos trip, Susan, you were on that trip, I believe, with Dee, right? I know you're muted, but
Yeah, I unmuted myself. Yes, there were like 9 of us on that trip, Dee and I included. Yes.
yep. Okay. So what I would say is that Galapagos is a lot of water activity, a lot of snorkeling. But every time you went on land, it was amazing. I mean, the sea lions would come right up to you and nibble on your shoelaces. The birds were amazing. The whole experience was just phenomenal. And the takeaway for me was I had an underwater point and shoot camera, which is what was used in this particular shot. And when I got home and looked at the photos, I'm going, I need to get a real camera because they just didn't do justice. And so from there, a friend of mine was a Canon shooter. And that's when I started. I bought my first DSLR. I think it was a Canon T2i or something like that. I don't even remember now, but this was 10 years ago that I started this adventure. Another shot from the Galapagos, and again with this one, you're able, this is how close you can get to these animals. And that's why I have it in here. It's the camera wasn't great, but you could get within inches of these land iguanas, and they would just stay there and let you take their picture. It was exciting to say the least. So that's Galapagos. And then, there's this Sally Lightfoot crab. I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
And thank you, Susan. And again, it's part of photography is catching them when the light is right. I've got some reflection there. You can see the animal, the water's coming in. This was a shot that I really liked, though I'm sure a better camera could have done a better job, but still pretty exciting for me. Then my next big adventure was Tanzania in 2015. And this particular photo, out of the thousands that I have of Tanzania and the big 5 and everything else, this is by far my favorite photo. And when I got home and I was going through my photos, this one photo to me made the whole trip worthwhile. To have the cub looking right into the lens, mom constantly sort of searching to make sure there was nothing to be afraid of and to keep her baby safe was amazing. And that, I mean, if nothing hooked me on photography, this one photo for sure did. And it also taught me how difficult photographing wild animals in their natural habitat can be. We lucked out, as I said, we were there in 2015 during the Ebola crisis, but Tanzania is on the East Coast, Ebola was on the West Coast, so I had no fear of catching Ebola. And the good news was most people didn't do the research, so they canceled all their trips. And this particular photo, we were the only vehicle with this mother cheetah, and she actually has 2 cubs. So pretty spectacular for me anyway. And then that brings us to our polar bears. So let's talk about polar bears. Churchill Wild, that is the name of the company that I use to go and photograph polar bears. And why I use them is they were the only company that I could find and that you would be on the ground with the bears. Now, polar bears are in the Arctic. They are the apex predator nothing is bigger than them, nothing is more fierce, and to be on the ground with that kind of an animal was just thrilling, to say the least. So I highly recommend Churchill Wild, and the only reason why I even knew about this company, mutual friend of Susan and Dee's had told me about this, and that's how I got there. So, you know, sometimes it's all about just the connections you make and learning where to go so that you can see what you want to see. So here we go with my first polar bear photo. And this is, first I should tell you, we were probably never closer than 50 yards to the polar bear. And they are massive. And I was there in November, which this is the time of the year when they're the smallest. They lose a lot of weight over the summer because polar bears they feed on ring seals, which are available to them when the ice freezes on the Hudson Bay. And that's where we were. So I flew into Churchill, Manitoba, Canada. And then from there, you fly about 115 miles south along the coastline. And in the middle of absolutely nowhere, because there is nothing else there, there's a lodge. And that's where we landed. And this is where I started getting photos of the polar bear. Now, initially, when I saw this guy doing this, I thought he was trying to creep up on us, like to be stealth. But in actuality, he's not. What he's doing is he's trying to clean all the fur under his neck and down across his shoulders because he can't reach it to clean himself, and he wants to be clean and stay warm. So a couple of polar bear facts is that actually they're classified as marine mammals, which was strange to me to hear that, but they spend a lot of time in the water trying to hunt their main food. And the other thing that's unique is that their skin is actually black, and their fur is hollow. And why it looks white is because it's reflecting the light. And so at this point, I should say, one of the other things that attracts me to wildlife photography is learning more about the wildlife and what they do, how they survive. And I can tell you, we were in minus 30-degree temperatures. We were cold sometimes, but I don't think the bears would just fall asleep. They had no problem. So they are well insulated. 5 inches of blubber will keep them toasty warm. This one, and again, at this time of the year in November, they're not very active because they're really waiting for that sea ice to freeze. So, you know, I have hundreds of photos of polar bears laying down, but the minute they'd start to get up, that's when, you know, you're just hammering the shutter button. And because that's what you want to see. You want to see them up. And I would go back again and maybe a different time of the year to get some different photos. But this guy, I like to think he's contemplating his next move. Should I get up or not? And then they stand up, and then they are big. And as I said, this is the smallest they are. They've lost most of their weight over the summer because there's really, I mean, they eat grass, they eat all kinds of things. But it's the blubber that really adds the weight. So this polar bear is probably only around 800 pounds. And after he goes out on the sea ice and is eating all winter long, he'll come back and be about 1,500 pounds. So they add a lot of weight so that they can make it through the summer. Another interesting fact is polar bears do not hibernate. They are not like grizzlies or brown bears or black bears. They don't hibernate. The females will den in the winter, and she will den because that's where she gives birth. And when a baby is born, it's less than 10 pounds. and very small. And she feeds it for the first 3 months in the den. And then around March, they have what they call the den emergence, and the females will come out with the cubs, which are maybe 4 to 5 months old by then. And it's the mad dash to get to the Hudson Bay and to get onto the sea ice, because male polar bears will kill the cubs and eat them because everybody's hungry at this time of the year. So the female is really working hard to keep those cubs safe and get them out on the ice. And again, I love this shot just because he's kind of almost looking right down into my lens. And, you notice he's got really tiny ears, because anything that's exposed to the cold is not so much fun. If I had a back shot of him, which I don't have in this group, you would see they have a very tiny tail. But the thing that they have that is very big, it's their feet. And this photo gives you a little bit better impression. But I'll tell you, the first day that I was at the lodge, I'm looking out these big picture windows, and there's not a lot of snow on the ground, but it looked like somebody had walked by using snowshoes. And one of the guides was going by, and I go, "Hey, were you guys out, or was somebody out practicing with snowshoes? What's the deal with that?" And he looked out and he goes, "Oh no, those aren't snowshoes. Those are polar bear tracks. They're huge. And those feet are more than 12 inches across. So the front paws, when they're in the water, they're using them as a paddle, and their hind legs are used as a rudder to steer them through the water in pursuit of their happy meal." And this has to be one of my favorite photos ever. Just how peaceful that bear looks, and he was just outside the lodge. And I will say, the front of the lodge, there's a piece of land, and then there's a landing strip for the planes, and then it's Hudson Bay. And the backside, they have this electrified fence, but I'm sure if a polar bear wanted through, he could, or if she could, but that's never happened. So, which is good. I don't think anybody would want that to happen. And this is how we search for polar bears at times. That happens to be a picture of the guide's back. And there were 12 of us on this trip, and there would be 3 guides. And the guides there'd be one in the front, one in the back, and one in the middle. So I never felt not safe. I always felt very safe. They did have weapons. That is a rifle across his back. As we were told, they've never had to use one. Excuse me. And they are grateful that they don't have to use them, because they said the amount of paperwork, if they ever killed a bear, would just bury them. So that's and just incredibly beautiful, silent, so peaceful. And then you'd find a bear. And it wouldn't be a trip to Canada without seeing the Northern Lights. And I would say on this trip, they ask you, do you want to be awakened for the Northern Lights? And of course I said yes. I would never want to miss it. And so, they knock on your door, you hurry up, you get dressed. And when I'm talking layers of clothing, I'm not kidding. It's many layers. From head to toe, to hand warmers, toe warmers, you name it. My gloves were three gloves, a liner, a heavier liner, and then a big outer mitt, which you could get your fingers out of so you could take pictures. But this particular shot, the first night the Northern Lights showed up, I went out, hurry up, get dressed, go outside. And if I thought it was cold during the day, it was worse at night. I don't think I was outside 5 minutes, and I'm like, screw this. This is just too cold. Okay, I've seen them. They're fantastic. Then I went back inside, And the hallway across from my room, or from all the rooms, have these huge picture windows, and it's heated. So I just dragged over a chair, put my lens right up against the glass window, and started taking photos. And honestly, looking at this photo as compared to some of the others that I've seen, I really lucked out by moving inside, because this foreground, I think, makes the shot. You know, there's something that's hanging on to those lights, because these lights are just dancing. They're moving all the time. They're not stationary. So it was an incredible sight. Every night was incredible. And every night I would be in my chair taking photos from inside. And I don't know, Irene, if we have any more time or if I should stop. But that was the polar bears. And then just a couple of quick photos. My penguin friends. This is a trio of penguins and king penguins, which are the second largest. And this was on a trip to Antarctica. And, you know, I mean, there's seals in the background, and they're just great to see and be around them. And then that's me, and this might be in South Georgia, I'm not sure, but there's 10,000 penguins behind me. And
Wow. Wow.
I mean, you know, and they've got babies. I didn't put any shots of the babies in there, but they have babies. And I mean, to see 10,000, not only do you see them, but you smell them. So that was great. And again, you know, you're bundled up because it's not exactly warm out there. Next, and as I say, I'm not a landscape photographer, and I'll blow through these pretty quick, but this was a bison trail, and I was in Yellowstone in the winter, because when else would you go to Yellowstone but in the winter? And I just love the simplicity of it, and for me, it's a very soothing photo.
Mhm.
So, you know, as I like to say, I'm not a landscape photographer, but even a blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while. The bison,
Wow.
just covered in snow, and lots of snow, and their head and their necks are so strong, they just use it like a snow plow, and they just brush from side to side to get down to the green grass underneath all that snow, so they're eating throughout the winter. And these guys are very unpredictable, so you definitely don't want to get too close. Then I went to, I've been to Alaska a few times, and, you know, this happened to be at Lake Clark, Mom and two of her cubs. How do you not love that photo? Everybody's just resting. And, and then this guy, this was one of the Alaska trips, and he had just crossed the stream. He was looking for salmon, but didn't find any. But then we were all on the other side of the stream, and, you know, he just kept getting bigger and bigger in my viewfinder. And this is what cubs do. So when we were in Lake Clark, this was at our lodge, and there was only one other lodge in the area that we saw when we were flying in. But one morning when we got up and we were going to go out, our bear guide said, "Quick, grab your cameras, come outside. Mom and two of her cubs are there." And Mom was sleeping, and the cubs just were like 5-year-olds, fighting, playing, rolling around, having a great time. And again, it's like, how do you not love that photo? I wish the grass was a little more natural, but oh well. And then last but not least, I went to Africa. This is a baby gorilla munching on something that they like, which turns their teeth black. So you would think that they need a dentist, but in fact, it's just what they do. And this one is kind of cool because you're in the rainforest, and it is really tough to get them, their eyes lit up. because you're in a rainforest and then they have such a forward brow, it is a difficult shot. But this was, you know, just hanging out, and we're just hanging out, and I probably wasn't more than 4 feet from this baby gorilla. And there's the silverback of the group. And again, he just happened to look up and we caught the light. So I was excited about that. And last but not least, one of my monkey friends, a golden monkey, and they're cute. I just want to like grab their cheeks. So, you know, that was my adventure. And it's in the 10 years, I would say my most influential photographer, his name is Charles Glatzer. He's a wildlife photographer. And I think when anybody is doing photography, you find the people that speak to you and that you understand them. And I just like the way Chaz goes about figuring out exposure, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all good.
Okay.
And
Well, thanks.
I am gonna-
Kay. Could you wrap it up now?
Yep, I am. There is one thing I want to do. I want to give AOPR a plug, because for any of you who have seen the post office windows, I thanked a whole bunch of people. And one of the things about AOPR is everybody was willing to help. If I had a question, I could ask somebody and they tell me what they knew. And that's what ultimately made that window, in my opinion, pop. All the help that I got. So thanks. Thanks, AOPR.
And thank you. Wow, amazing, amazing. All right, let me just, let's see, where is she? Oh, I guess, oh, here we move pen. There we go. Okay, so we have a few minutes. Are there any questions anyone has?
Just want to make a comment that the 2 of those photos are framed and in our bathroom.
Lucky
one of-
you.
Yes, one of Kay's shots, it was similar to the one she showed about Yellowstone in winter, but there's a creek going through and more trees, and I have that as a screensaver. She told me I didn't need to pay her royalties because it was before she was famous. So
Well, that was, I feel like I just went on an adventure with you. That was awesome. Kay. Really
Well,
nice.
thank you very much. I'm always happy to share any photos. You can ask any of my friends. Every time I come back from a trip, they get a Dropbox link and I'll go, hey, go look at the photos.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm just really amazed at how adventurous you are and all the conditions that you're willing to go through. Terrific. Oh,
Hey, if you watched Mutual of Omaha,
yes,
you know you have to put yourself in the environment to get the shot.
right.
So,
That's true.
Okay, so now we're going to go ahead with Lenore. And Lenore, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, please do.
All righty. Okay, I'm hoping you can see that.
Perfect.
Wonderful. So I really want to thank you, Kay. That was awesome. I, like you, started young at the activities that led to where I am in this life. Let me see if I can change slides here. Hold on 1 millisecond. There we go. So it all began with a toy sewing machine. I was a latchkey kid and spent my after school hours at the neighbor's house, and she was a quilter. And around 4th grade, I started making doll clothes with this tiny little metal toy sewing machine. And she taught me to sew on it, and I used all her scraps from quilt making to make the clothes, which was just a hoot. I kept sewing and spent a summer in Kansas with my dad and my new stepmother, and she taught me to sew properly. So I started making my own clothes, and in high school, I started making clothes for my friends. I graduated in 1966, and in 67, at the age of 19, I had a fashion show of my designs that I made. And my girlfriends from high school were the models. Let me go back. I think I missed, there we go. So there's me at the fashion show, skinny in my little mini skirt. I was very influenced by the British fashion scene with, I don't know if you remember Mary Quant, and people like, and Twiggy, if you're of my generation. So that led to me opening a shop and selling my designs and making custom clothes. We moved in 70 to Santa Cruz, and I moved my shop there, but I had to rename it. There was already a looking glass shop, so I named it the Sunshine Shop. And I began doing custom bikinis with different size tops and bottoms, which was a really big deal to girls and women at the time and still would be. As far as I know, I was the first on the West Coast to do that. And Santa Cruz is such a beach town and so full of people from the hot valley over the mountain. The gals would get out of the car. I was right on the main drag to the boardwalk, and they'd get out of the car, come in, choose a fabric, get fitted, go to the beach with their boyfriends, and then come back at the end of the day, and I'd have their bikini and little tops and hats in matching fabric ready for them. So word spread, and it really caught on. It was a ton of fun. I did that for several years. The next step was my next endeavor. I took a stained glass class while I was running the Sunshine Shop, and that really lit me. And I think I was also tired of being hunched over a sewing machine all the time. So I didn't want to go past there yet. Started making custom stained glass commissions for custom homes, restaurants, and the like. This next slide is these are the cartoons that I did in tiny scale, 1/8 inch scale, to show the customers based on measuring where they wanted the windows and the designs they were desiring. This was for a couple who were worldwide bird watchers. And I'm a bird watcher myself, and this was fun. This was from a reference photo from one of their trips. I think this was Costa Rica. And then this is a reference photo from right in the Santa Cruz area. So this is just a shot of me working with the lead and solder. And this is one of the several custom windows we did for the Crow's Nest restaurant down in Santa Cruz at the Yacht Harbor. This was a huge light box. This is about, I think, 7 feet wide and 3 feet tall, something like that, with fluorescent lights inside to light it. And this was above the salad bar in the restaurant. And then we did a series of stained glass seabirds that went all the way around all the windows at the Crow's Nest restaurant. So this one's pelicans, and there were albatross and seagulls and cormorants all the way around. This is at the Shadowbrook restaurant in Capitola. And this is a little table for two halfway down a flight of stairs. And that whole old Shadowbrook, which is still there and still doing fine, everyone jokes it's held together by all the ivy that's growing all over the building. And therefore the theme of this window was ivy. And again, this is a light box with a beveled mirror in the middle. So you can see some of the rest of the restaurant here. And right down here in this corner is a little snail, because unbeknownst to all the customers, there were snails all over the back of the house. And I cut, you can't see it, but a tiny little swirl in the glass, hand-blown glass, to be the shell of that little snail. So when I know people that I know are going there, I tell them to look for the snail down in the corner. We also did a lot of windows for custom homes. So the journey, we've gone through the 60s and 70s, and next we'll do the 80s. I was always doing something creative, but not painting. And the next phase, which was the 80s, when I was doing stained glass for folks, it just led in a natural way to doing interior design. And one of the customers was to completely refurbish the Casablanca restaurant down on the beach boardwalk in Santa Cruz. It was a classic, old school seafood restaurant with fish nets and cork floats and glass float balls and stuffed fish. And I think it was called Ye Old somebody or other. So it was very much in need of an update. So we built these platforms with brass rail later. So there were 3 levels when we finished with the renovation. So everybody in the restaurant could see the view. It's a very foggy day, but there's a beach and the wharf and Monterey Bay out there. This is later with and to answer the Casablanca theme and really forever get rid of the ye old fisherman theme, we made these forms and I pleated fabric into them to try and give that Casablanca look. While I was doing interior design, I did quite a few custom homes. This one is in SoCal up in the mountains. That round tower has a curved door, which had to be made custom. And it was very difficult to find anyone who still did custom plaster work. The house was full of crown molding, but no crown molding to do this curve of the turret. We found a very elderly gentleman, or at least to my eyes at that time, who knew how to do it. And he had made a form with the shape out of plywood. And then he was up on a ladder and he packed the plaster and pulled the form, and which shaped the plaster. Very similar to a potter doing the rim of a vase or something. You know, it was amazing to watch. One of my projects was at Candlestick Park, and that was to do the owner's box for Eddie DeBartolo, for him to entertain his clients. And I did quite a few others. So in the 90s, we're going decade by decade. On until 2020, when I retired, I did laboratory design consulting for biotech companies, universities, UC Santa Cruz, UC Berkeley, UC Merced, when it was just a imagination of architects, and is now a huge campus with a lot of finished laboratories. So that was fascinating, very dry, very mechanical, but also very creative. So it fed my juices and need to create. which brings me to retirement. When I finally got back to doing actual art, which I had done in high school and loved, I took classes from a wonderful, wonderful teacher who is now my dear friend and mentor. And she taught me the wonders of water and pigment. Her name's Cara Brown. You may have seen her work. She's spectacular. Her art is spectacular. So is she. This is a collaborative piece that a bunch of her students, she has groups on Thursdays and Fridays, and then teaches on weekends as well. But we each did a square, and we've done several of these, and there's always a theme that Cara comes up with, and then she assembles it. And that was a really a fun thing to do. This is just one of her classes. Always inspiring. I still go. It's been 12 years and I go every Friday, and we share our work. We encourage each other. We help each other decide what to do next. Oh, good. We have a sideways picture. Oh, well, I had to screw something up. This is about the color testing and the color selection that I do prior to actually starting a painting. If you can imagine sideways, this is the reference photo, a color chart I did, and then experimenting with colors for the actual painting, the specific painting. And then I've really enjoyed playing with the color, exploring what it can do, and what happens when you mix different things. This is a grid of what I did was literally take every tube of yellow of all the shades and every tube of all the shades of red and made this grid. So Hansa Yellow Deep, or in this case I clicked, but here's a cobalt green combined with yellow, deep Hansa Yellow. So you find out a lot. You can take this same yellow and see all the different greens that can be created by combining it with all these different blues. And then the other characteristic of paints are some do a fine job of what's called granulation. This is a good example right here, where the two colors don't fully combine, and they create this wonderful grainy texture, which can really contribute to a painting that you want that kind of texture. And this is the third chart, and this is blues and reds, and same thing, amazing. I mean, if you just go down this row, how many different things happen depending on which of these colors you combine that red with. And then to put those tools to work, this is a painting of some videos.
Saturday, and it's 4:55. It's a little bit late. I did.
Is somebody on the phone or something?
I've got to get off the phone. Bye-bye. Sorry.
Oh. If you just mute yourself, Carol, hi.
But I did. In case.
Oh, that's all right. So this is a exercise that I did to play with the various, because greens are tough. Nature has 10,000 greens, and they're really known by artists to be difficult to come up with different greens in a painting. So I spent a good deal of time playing with that. So here's a series of a couple of progress photos of that painting and how it evolved. And this is a different painting, and I have progress photos here for it. I'm going to move you guys out of the way there. So this is called masking fluid, and you can use it to create a dam to hold the paint inside of a perimeter, which was an important function of this particular painting. You can also, what it does is it reserves the white. So here's where I have rubbed the masking fluid off on this little exercise. And see how it held the purples and blues here? It held the green and blue here. It allows you to really play with color inside of a perimeter, and which I thoroughly enjoy. So here you can see the masking fluid here. It's a greenish color, and you can see where I flooded purple along the edge. Sorry. This shows it as well. And in this case, I kept adding more and more color. Thin washes of color on top of the previous color. Sometimes you wait for it to dry and sometimes you don't. This masking fluid really gives you the freedom to play with the wet color and see where it goes and what it does. I really enjoy that. So here is the finished painting. You can really see those layers here, here, and elsewhere. So that was tons of fun. And then sometimes I use a monotone. I just put my iPhone setting and take essentially a black and white photo of a painting to see how it's looking, in to take away the color, but be able to see the values, the darks, the lights, the shadows, the contrast. And that often will help me go back. It'll, like, for instance, right here, I realized this area needed work in comparison to these other areas. And this very dark, I needed to darken up a couple of other places to give this dark area a reason to be. And then this is hats off to AOPR. I love their community enrichment program in Point Richmond with banners that we all submit our art, and Cannoli, who you probably know, and Sharon print them into outdoor and indoor banners. And in this case, I sold a giclée of this painting to a woman who saw the banner in the laundromat window. So here's another series of progress shots of a different painting. This is a seashell painting. Again, I used the masking fluid. I don't always, but I wanted to show what it can do for you. I definitely used it here. So it's other thing you can do with it besides surrounding a space is you can use it and paint right over it, as I did with these stripes, and it'll conserve the whites for you. There's a big challenge with, there are many, but one of the main challenges with watercolor is conserving the whites, because the white paper is where you get your lightest lights. And if you lose them, it's really hard to bring them back. So this is later in the painting. This is a close-up of the abalone shell. This was very enjoyable painting to work on. And then this is another painting with progress photos. This is Octavia Takes a Stroll. And this was from a wonderful nature photo calendar. And I just fell in love with this octopus and thoroughly enjoyed it. And in this case, I needed to experiment a lot to create the texture of the sea floor that she's floating across. So I did a lot of tests and a lot of off to the side thumbnails, and then started playing with her body and her tentacles and the seafloor. And I'm so grateful to AOPR. I am in 2 exhibits currently. This one, I have 3 paintings at Laura's restaurant in Marina Bay. These 2 paintings are in the bar area. There we go. And then I have one other in the main part of the restaurant. There's a close-up. This one we were looking at just a couple of minutes ago, and this one as well. And then the other exhibit is at El Sol in downtown Point Richmond, a Mexican restaurant. Myself and my dear friend Jean Brady were asked by AOPR to do an exhibit of our watercolors, which opened in April, and it's still there. And here are just a few of the volunteers who worked hard to make that exhibit happen. We had a wonderful reception and a great turnout. We had about 60 people come through. And my art is on the right side as you enter the restaurant, and then Jean's is on the left. And I'll show you what I exhibited there. Those cymbidiums we were looking at earlier. This is a still life in my kitchen of my mother's antique Chinese plate and a small Chinese bowl. This is a bouquet from my garden at the end of summer in 2020, I think, where I literally went out in mid-October and picked one of everything that was still blooming and made this bouquet. And then here we have, of course, morning glories. And I love backlight. I love photography of backlight nature, and this was especially challenging. And this is another still life in my kitchen. Had lots of fun. And this is taken from a reference photo when I went to Sorrento. Our hotel, we went up those long stairs to find our room, and here was this long outdoor hallway. And at the end of the, I mean, like 40 feet. And at the end of the hallway was this incredible open air view of the town of Sorrento. And it literally made us gasp. It was just so gorgeous. And this is another still life in my kitchen. Same bowl, different plate. And I inserted tiles from photos I have when I visited Monet's home in Giverny. And I'm nuts for blue and white. And so I used artistic license, and I put Monet's tiles in my kitchen in this painting. And thank you. Now, do you have any questions?
They're beautiful, Lenore. Thank you for sharing them.
Thank you. I'll stop sharing here. Anybody ask anything?
We picked up a few extra people, and
Yeah, I see.
And I just wanted to tell Carol and Jackie that you'll get to see the recording later on.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, because the link on the artist web page that I got sent would not open.
Oh,
I kept trying for 20 minutes.
oh,
Yeah,
My
I got-
iPad, my computer, my phone, it wouldn't open. And then Carol had a different link, and that's how I got on. She sent it to me.
yeah, Irene, I got a whole series of emails here while we've been on of people who couldn't get on.
Oh,
So,
oh, that's
but they all know it's going to be on YouTube, so it's fine.
yeah.
Good. A wonderful
Thanks, Eleanor.
presentation, what I saw.
Well, it'll be
Yeah.
on Cannoli will put it on the AOPR. So, and you miss Kay's incredible photography.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Lenore, I have to say, those paintings were amazing, and using watercolor. My brother is really the artistic one in the family, and he would do watercolor, and it's like, oh my God, that's so hard. You made it look, well, not easy, but pretty amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love it. It is challenging. And I'm a novice. I'm getting to know it. But the playing with it, and I'm no longer like, oh my God, every brushstroke is a permanent commitment. I'm learning to let go, and actually doing that, I think my paintings are better for it, to relax, like most things in life,
Are there any other comments or questions?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want you all to know that these two ladies have really worked hard on their presentations, and we've done practice sessions, and it was worth it because both of you have done a beautiful, beautiful job. Thank you both so much. Let's give them a hand.
Yeah, let's give
Okay, well, that ends our artist talk for today.